everyone, welcome back to the Visual Podcast channel on AI. Today we're diving into the fundamental building blocks of programming, variables and data types. We'll explore how to store and manipulate data, which is the foundation of any program. And join me as we unravel these concepts together. But before we get started, let's introduce Sophia, a bright young student who's eager to learn Python. Sophia, say hello to the viewers.
Hi, everyone. So I've heard about variables before, but I'm not sure what they actually do.
They are used to store and manipulate data, which can be numbers, text, or even more complex structures. Think of them as labels we attach to different pieces of data.
Labels? Could you give me an example?
Of course. Let's say we want to store a person's name. We can create a variable called name and assign it the value Alice.
So name is the label, and Alice is the information it holds?
Exactly. Now, whenever we need to refer to that person's name, we can simply use the variable name. And
that's pretty cool. So how do we actually create these variables?
In Python, it's simple. We just write the variable name followed by an equal sign, and then the value we want to assign.
Like this. Name is equal to Alice.
That's right. And to print the value of name on the screen, we use the print of name.
So if we run this code, it will display Alice on the screen.
You got it. Now, let's talk about naming conventions for variables.
What are those?
They're like rules we follow when choosing names for our variables. And, to make our code more readable and understandable, we use descriptive names that reflect the data they hold. So, for example, instead of using X or Y, we can use age, height, or product price.
That makes sense. So we should avoid using vague names.
Exactly. And one more thing to keep in mind is that variable names cannot start with numbers or special characters. And they can only start with letters or underscores.
Okay, I'll remember that.
Now, let's talk about the scope of variables.
What do you mean by scope?
Scope refers to the region within a program where a variable is accessible. Variables can have either global scope or local scope.
Can you explain that further?
Sure. Global variables are accessible from anywhere in the program, while local variables are only accessible within the specific block of code where they're defined.
So if I define a variable outside any function, it's a global variable.
Yes, that's right. And if I define a variable inside a function, it's a local variable.
I see.
And if we try to access a local variable outside its scope, we'll get a name error.
Oh, so that's what that error message means.
Yeah. Now, let's move on to different types of data.
What types of data can we store in variables?
So, Python has a variety of data types. One of the most common types is numbers. numbers can be either integers or floating point numbers.
What's the difference between those two?
Integers are whole numbers like 1, 2, 3, and so on. Now, let's move on to strings. Strings are sequences of characters enclosed in single or double quotes. Strings can be used to represent text, words, sentences, and even paragraphs.
I'm starting to see how all these elements work together.
That's fantastic. Now, let's see how to find what data is stored using Python. We can use the type function to determine the data type of a variable. For example, type of name will return stir if name is a string. Welcome to the coding section. Here's a beginner-friendly example. So first we'll assign the value Alice to the variable name and the value 30 to the variable age. Then we'll print the values of name and age to the console. Next, we'll perform an addition operation on two variables. Number 1 is equal to 10 and number 2 is equal to 5 and store the result in a variable called sum. We'll then print the value of sum to the console. Finally, we'll create a string variable called message and assign the value hello world to it. And we'll then print the value of message to the console. We also create a Boolean variable called isActive and assign the value true to it. We'll then print the value of isActive to the console.
So in this beginner-friendly code, we are assigning values to variables, performing arithmetic operations, creating a string, and checking a Boolean value.
Exactly. Now, let's move on to the graduate level code. In this example, we'll use multiple assignment, format strings, and use string methods. First, we'll use multiple assignment to assign the values 1, 2, and 3 to the variables x, y, and z, respectively. So then we'll print the values of x, y, and z to the console. Next, we'll format a string using curly brackets. We'll create a variable called name and assign the value Bob to it. We'll also create a variable called age and assign the value 25 to it. Then we'll create a formatted string variable called formatted message using name is under the curly bracket name and I am under the curly bracket age years old. We'll then print the value of formatted message to the console. Finally, we'll use string methods to manipulate a string. We'll create a string variable called text and assign the value, this is a sample text, to it. We'll then use the upper method to convert the string to uppercase and print the result so far, print section there. We'll then use the lower method to convert the string to lowercase and print the result. And finally, we'll use the split method to split the string into a list of words and print the result. Let's move on to the advanced level code. In this example, we'll define a function with type hints, use a conditional statement with Boolean operators, and work with complex numbers. First, we'll define a function called calculateArea that takes two arguments, length and width, both of type float, and returns a value of type float. The function will calculate the area of a rectangle by multiplying the length and width and returning the result. Next, we'll use a conditional statement with Boolean operators to check the temperature and print a message accordingly. We'll create a variable called temperature and assign the value 25 to it. Then we'll use an if statement to check if the temperature is greater than. If it is, we'll print the message, it's hot. Otherwise, we'll use an elif statement to check if the temperature is less than 10. If it is, we'll print the message, it's cold. Otherwise, we'll use an else statement to print the message, it's pleasant. Finally, we'll work with complex numbers. We'll create a complex number variable called complex number and assign the value 3 plus 4j to it. We'll then use the real attribute to access the real part of the complex number and print the result. We'll then use the imag attribute to access the imaginary part of the complex number and print the result.
So in this advanced level code, we're defining a function with type hints, using a conditional statement with Boolean operators, and working with complex numbers.
Exactly. Remember, the code for beginner-friendly, graduate level, and advanced level Python code examples were provided in the video description. Don't get intimidated by the advanced level code. If you watch the channel videos consistently, even you can write the same level code. If you encounter any issues, whether related to the specific code in this class or something else related to Python, feel free to reach out for help. I'll respond if time permits, and don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for receiving regular updates from the channel. Your likes and comments keep me motivated to create more content. See you in the next class.
Thanks for explaining all of this, Alex.